All right, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you everyone for joining us for another Oley webinar entitled A Seat at the Table, Navigating Nutrition Support and Staying Included During the Holidays, sponsored by our awesome partner, Cardinal Health. So thank you. I also wanted to take a moment for those of you that are new or unfamiliar with the Oley Foundation. First of all, welcome. The Oley Foundation is a nonprofit home nutrition therapy community and advocacy group. Our mission is to enrich the lives of those living with home IV nutrition or tube feeding through advocacy, education, community, and innovation. So our educational programming being one of those key pillars. I want to also share a couple of key housekeeping items before we get started. This is a webinar format Teams meeting, which means that attendee cameras and microphones will be off. You'll only be able to see and hear the presenters. While we won't be utilizing the chat or the raise hand feature, you can use the Q&A function. Should be in the toolbar either at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on where you're calling in from. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, and we encourage you to ask, feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature, and we will get to them at the end of our presentation, or we might even be pulling from them to incorporate into our discussion. This webinar, just like the rest of our programming, will be recorded and made available on our website. The information provided during this webinar is for educational purposes only and not intended as medical advice, particularly as we talk about traveling and navigating different components of the holiday season. We encourage you to consult with your healthcare team before making any changes to your care plan. Before we get started, though, we would love to learn a little bit more about you. John, can you pull up our first question? Vince, would you mind reading the question out loud? Because I actually cannot see it since I'm sharing my screen.
I cannot see it either.
Currently, we're at 75% are industry partners, 20% healthcare providers, and no patients or caregivers at the prop, 17% patient, 17% healthcare provider, and 67% industry partner as of right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I love learning about who's calling in. It sounds like
25% patient.
Great. Sounds like we've got a good mix. I'm sorry, it sounds like my cat wants to be a part of this webinar. All right, we can pull up the next poll. Where are we calling in from today? Melissa, do we have any responses so far?
We do. We have Florida.
It's cold here in Florida.
Ohio, Pennsylvania.
Probably colder up there.
Yes. Michigan, Connecticut, Utah.
Awesome.
Oh, Cincinnati, Washington, Indiana, Utah.
Love the representation. Perfect. And then Melissa and John, can you pull up our first holiday related question?
Yes, it says, when you think of the holiday season while managing nutrition support, what thoughts or emotions come to mind?
Such a good question. What are we hearing so far?
So far, we've got anxiety, waiting for more responses. Stress, sadness, stressful, dread.
Oh, yeah.
Tired.
Definitely. I'm glad we chose this topic so we can delve into gosh, yeah, some of these emotions more today. And then we do have one more question about holidays and traveling. Melissa, could you pull that up?
Mhm. Waiting for that one to pop up. Kalee, can you can you speak that question? I don't have another preloaded question one.
Oh, it's okay. So the question is, how many of our viewers are planning on traveling for the holidays? Yes or no? Are we traveling?
Mm. Okay, we've got the poll coming in now with that question. And right now we're at 80% yes, they're traveling, 20% no, 67 and 33%. Oh, 50-50, yes and no.
Wow, that's surprising.
Oh, no's have taken over, 64-36.
I do know, especially the air
Oh,
travel situation has gotten messy. Oh, hot off the press.
71-29 now, no to
Wow.
yes.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing more about you all, where you're coming from, so that we can tailor this presentation a little bit. This topic was chosen to highlight and acknowledge that yes, while the holidays can bring joy and connection, like you all highlighted, it can also contribute stress and anxiety and potential challenges, particularly when you're managing home nutrition support. And so we have assembled an awesome panel who will be introducing themselves shortly to talk through some strategies to help others on nutrition support, talking about navigating and feeling included during meals, gatherings, and celebrations, but also setting boundaries and advocating for your needs while still creating meaningful holiday connections and moments that go beyond the meals or social components that tend to be at the focus of holidays. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll take away some tips and tricks and learn some ways in terms of how to stay connected, reduce stress, and really make the holiday season your own. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's start things off. Vince, would you mind introducing yourself just to share with those attending just a little bit of context about your connection to the nutrition support community?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Kalee. My name is Vincent Rosche. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for Oley. I have been on nutrition support almost my whole life. I was diagnosed with chronic intestinal pseudo obstruction at age 4, got my first G-tube at age 6, got my first PICC line at age 6 as well. Now I am 34 and I've been on TPN consistently since I was 17, and I have a femoral central line.
Thank you, Vince. And how about you, Jayme?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jayme Scali. I'm the mother of 3 children. 2 are on TPN. My oldest has been on for 14 years, and my son has been on for 3. And I also work for a children's hospital system in their patient experience team. And I also work for a home infusion company, similarly focused on patient experience.
Awesome. Oliver?
Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver. I am a patient consumer of nutrition support. I have been on nutrition support since 2022, so 3 years coming up on 4. I have a G and a J tube separated. My primary diagnosis is gastroparesis, amongst other things that have caused me to need nutrition support. I also have a tunneled line, which I use for IV fluids, and previously was on TPN, but now I'm on enteral feeds. So yeah, it's a little bit of my background.
Thanks, Oliver. And last but not least, Trinity.
Hi, my name is Trinity Lowthian, and I'm from Canada, so have already celebrated Thanksgiving, so have some good tips there. I've been on TPN for 7 years. I'm also a registered dietitian and am a Paralympian as well in wheelchair fencing.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to start things off, kind of transitioning from that question that we asked about some of the emotions that can be triggered during the holiday season. And so I want to ask the group, how do the holidays or how have the holidays impacted your emotions or sense of belonging? And then how do you balance like that and your medical needs with wanting to feel included during the holiday season? Does anyone want to get started? I'll pick on Vince to go first.
I knew that was coming. I knew you were going to pick on me. So I've been on nutrition support, like I said, for a very long period of time, and I think it's changed over the years. So when I was younger, holidays used to be very impactful and had a lot of emotion around them because I was scared that, I couldn't eat or I couldn't participate in a lot of the events that my family was doing. And my family likes to have multiple different, like, because my parents are divorced, so like having multiple different places to go, it was a lot on me to try to explain everything. I think now as I'm older, most of my family and friends kind of know what's going on with my health. So it's less of an impact. But when I was younger, it was definitely more impactful. And, it's just really about explaining kind of what you need and being comfortable. And sometimes it's hard to be comfortable in those needs, but I think emotions were definitely very hard to do it for a sense of belonging. I always questioned, like, should I be here because I really can't enjoy the food that everybody can enjoy? But after some time, it really got to me where it wasn't about the food, it wasn't about the presents, it was really about like engaging and connecting with the people that were there, right? Like we center ourselves around food, but it's more to engage and connect and see those people that you maybe not have seen all year round. So I had to focus more on the connection versus and kind of throw that food out the picture. That was kind of my solution for that.
How about you, Trinity? I see you nodding your head, and I didn't even think about Thanksgiving already happening in Canada.
I agree with Vince about a lot of those points, especially decentering things from the food celebrations. For me, like for example, for Christmas, for Advent calendars, which are typically pretty food centered, my family, we make our own. So most people get ones with chocolate, but then I get one with things like bath bombs and hair clips and things that objectively I think are better than just a little piece of chocolate. So it's something nice to look forward to. And you can also look at it as something that's more sustainable that way. So just like having those flips of things that now at Christmas and at Thanksgiving and Easter and those holidays, our family plays games and they're not food related, but they're just games to play. And yes, everyone else enjoys a meal, but I'm able to focus on playing the games and things that aren't related to food to connect with people. I also find though that holidays are really hard, especially when I was a kid, I was in the hospital for most holidays and Christmas. And so I felt like when I was younger, I didn't really get to celebrate it. And I kind of coped with that by saying, "Well, I don't really care about Christmas. Like it doesn't really matter. I don't need to celebrate it. It's not that special. I don't care about my birthday, none of that." And so now I feel like I still don't really care about it and like it. So it's really hard for me to be able to enjoy it. And so I just think of myself, okay, I'm gonna at least pretend to enjoy it so to not ruin the experience for people around me, but just focusing on that and fake it till you make it. Sometimes then you'll get some moments that you actually enjoy and just taking it as really any other day. And it doesn't have to be the best day of your year or something that you look forward to, which is something that other people might think of it as.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective. We put so much pressure on the holidays and, adhering to different transitions, like almost like this big like checklist. Oliver, have you had a similar experience as that? Or like how do you view the holidays? How to
Yeah,
navigate
so
that?
my holidays have definitely changed, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. I moved from the area where I grew up to completely across the country. So I moved from Michigan to Washington. And so when I first moved out here, I was diagnosed with gastroparesis shortly after I settled in Washington. And so those first holidays after being diagnosed, I think were the most difficult because I did go from having the experience of like getting to enjoy all of the food and all of the like socializing and um all of that to like being really scared to what that was going to look like. And the first year I definitely remember being more challenging because I felt really sad that I like couldn't enjoy all of the same foods that I used to, or I felt left out in that sense. But I think the connection piece is really important. And even though I'm not around my family out here to spend holidays with, and I don't have the opportunity to travel back, I've found like a community of people out here that I can spend time with. And so my holidays have been more focused on that connection and that like building relationships rather than sitting down to like have a meal because I don't know, there's always going to be food around. I feel like when you're hanging out with new people or like that's just a thing people do is like, oh, let's go get coffee or let's go get lunch. And so having to navigate that was challenging, but around the holidays I think um I've just learned to do what I can in terms of like maybe I'll bring a food that feels safe for me to eat, since I do still do some oral intake. That way I can feel included. But yeah, navigating it the first year was very difficult. And I think I love that Trinity and Vincent both talked about like centering more on connection because I think that's what's helped me. But to build that connection was difficult initially for me. So I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the holidays. Grateful that now I have the community I have, but I didn't have that a few years ago, which made kind of dealing with the big scary life changes of like being on enteral feeds and then like losing like not having community at the same time was like really hard. And now I have community and I have more experience. So there's a little bit of like relief for me. Like I'm not stressed about Thanksgiving or Christmas this year because I know that I have people in my corner.
I love that. I know an emotion that I struggled with when I was on nutrition support was guilt. Like, kind of like what Trinity said, the holidays kind of shifted for me when I was, in and out of the hospital on nutrition support. It felt different, but I know that that day and those celebrations still meant a lot to my loved ones. And so I felt guilty if they felt guilty because I wasn't able to participate in the same way that I typically was. And so, Jayme, I would love to hear from you from like a parent caregiver perspective, how, well, like the emotional side of that and how you navigate that as a family.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. I guess the best word that comes to mind is pressure. And I feel like at baseline, everyone kind of feels the pressure and the hustle and bustle of the holidays. But then having a child, initially it was just my daughter that, wasn't able to access food and eat the way others could, was really like reframing my holiday and the expectations that I had. Because she was my first child and the first 4 years were turbulent. And you know, allowing myself grace that, and understanding that this doesn't look the way I thought it would, you know? And I think that that was the hardest barrier is just kind of creating not necessarily my own traditions because we have a tight knit family and we still are able to, participate. But initially it was just learning what our traditions were going to look like because they were a lot different than what mine did growing up or my husband's. So, allowing myself to just create our own way and our own path that was different and then just celebrate those things. So we've really been able to move forward with that. And it was really hard at first because of the pressure of family. Like everyone wants to see the baby, everyone wants to see the kids. They want, I mean, most people argue what in-law we're going to see, and so just really being able to help all of our relatives also understand that our holidays and the way we celebrate now just might be a little modified. So that was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I would love to unpack that more a little bit. Some of you all have alluded to this, but what if you had to define like what feeling included means to you now during the holiday season, as well as like strategies that you all have utilized to feel more comfortable or included during the holiday season, particularly like at kind of food-centered events. I think our community would really love to hear more about that. We got quite a few questions about these topics. Vince?
Yeah,
I
I knew
saw
you were gonna
you
call me. Yeah,
unmuted
yeah,
yourself.
I put myself up for that one. You're right. So I think it being feeling included can mean so many different things. Like as Trinity said, like playing games. Like it's really just about being there and connecting. I think for me personally, a good strategy that I use though is I try to just focus on like everybody else instead of myself because I feel like with my healthcare, I focus on my health a lot during the year. Like, can I eat this? Can I not eat that? What's going to happen? Doctor's appointments, insurance, all those things. So I think for holidays, I really just try to like fully include myself. Like I try to jump in, like I'm passing out presents with the little kids at, Christmas and I'm like, oh, this goes to aunt this person, this goes to that person. Like I try to just like dive right in because as Trinity said, I was in the hospital a few times when I was a child as well, during Christmas and holidays, and it's not fun to think about those times. So I try to really just dive right in and really include myself. And a lot of my family, they love it because they know that like I can't eat, so they don't really ask those questions because I was born this way. So a lot of my family kind of really don't have questions or the whole like can you eat this or can you eat that. They really don't put pressure on me, but it's nice that they like include me in those other things like, hey Vince, do you want to pass out the presents with the kids because they're still eating dessert and I can't eat dessert and the little kids are going crazy. Can we pass out presents? Can we do presents? So I'm like, of course, I'll go do that. So I try to like still involve myself around the things that are not food centered. Like if the kids are opening their gifts, I'm like opening gifts with them and I'm like helping them put their Legos together and things like that. Where, like I said, the other part of the family is really like enjoying dessert or still around the food area. So I try to just do other things instead of be around the food unless it's just like we're eating dinner. And even then, I still try to sit at the table and include myself. But most of my family, will knows that like if I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna eat. They don't ask me questions. So it is a little bit easier for me during that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that for Olivia, she is like the designated place setting person. So she'll create like a themed place setting and determine where everyone's sitting. And then she'll usually do like a joke. So she'll look up jokes and put one under everybody's plate. And then in between, like uh, my husband's family is Italian. So we have a lot of like courses. So in between the courses, we'll go through and people will do their jokes. And again, like takes that pressure off of her and she feels like she contributed in her own way without having to focus on the fact that she can't eat as much as everyone else.
I love that. And that's a lot of power to hold determining who sits where during the holidays.
Yeah, you want to
I
be
think
you
I
want to
would
be really
stir the
nice to her.
pot a little bit. Yes.
Hey,
How about you, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years, holidays have been pretty like low key and casual, which I think has really helped. I haven't been to a holiday recently where we've had like a big sit down dinner and everyone like formally sits down around the table. It's more of like grab a plate, grab what you want, we'll sit down, chat, and just like engage, which I think has been extremely helpful for me to feel more included because there's not this like pressure to sit down and then feel like all of this attention is maybe on you because you're not eating and everyone else is eating. But also for me, like I think I mentioned this previously, but I will typically try to bring a dish that I know I can tolerate, and so that there is like something available for me, or like someone will make a dish that I know that I can tolerate, depending on who's cooking. But previous to being on nutrition support, like holiday food was my favorite. And so I feel like sometimes I just choose to eat something, even if maybe I don't feel so great later, I don't recommend everyone do that. But um, I don't know, like I have to find a balance there. And I loved cooking and baking. That's something I did a lot of before my diagnosis. And so around the holidays, I try to engage in that a little bit more because that's something that I can give, and that like kind of takes, like Vincent was saying, taking the focus off of like the medical stuff or the health stuff. Like I will try to like make a pie because I like making pie and I think they're pretty, and I'll like do little decorations on it, or just try to contribute in a way that feels like I'm included. But it was really hard and is hard sometimes to be like, man, I miss the days where I could um, eat the stuffing, or like eat the pie, or eat whatever it is, and not feel terrible, or not feel super sick, or not get sick. So I think like I've done a lot of um, inner work to like try to deal with some of the grief around like food and the holidays, but I do feel like I can still be included in the food even if I can't eat it. But that has like taken time to get there, to like feel like I can participate in making of the food, or bringing food, and it not be super devastating. Because like for a while it sucked, to just like, to be very frank, like it was not fun to be not able to like participate in the food. But I feel like over time it's gotten easier.
Trinity, I'm going to put you on the spot with a spin. So, as a registered dietitian, I love to hear your thoughts, like both as a dietitian, and then somebody living on nutrition support, in terms of how you can maybe navigate those types of conversations with your healthcare team, in terms of, maybe how to safely enjoy the holiday season, like Oliver said, or, like just, yeah, questions to maybe consider asking, to be able to enjoy the holidays for those that are able to eat by mouth, and then also, just how to remain included during food centered times.
That's a great question. So I think obviously, like, keep those lines of communications open with your team about your goals and what's important to you and your quality of life. If it's really important for you to have mashed potatoes at the table, then talk with them about, okay, what's a way to have mashed potatoes that you'll enjoy? Maybe no onions or chives or chunky bits in it, and maybe blend your mashed potatoes, and that will work for you. So figure out that medium, but then also recognize that just because turkey or ham or stuffing are the traditional foods, there's so much more beyond that that you can have for a celebration. One year, like my entire family, we did shawarma for Easter. And so it's like those things that even regular people who eat by mouth, like they go to 3 holiday dinners in a row, you're kind of sick of turkey by then. Everyone welcomes a change. And if it's something for you that you can enjoy better, it's a safer food for you, that's an absolutely good reason to suggest it for the table, or to even just bring a side dish of something like Oliver mentioned that you can enjoy. Also, if it's like you're only really able to stick with liquids or smoothies, things like that, there's plenty of smoothie recipes for like pumpkin pie flavored smoothies, some other kinds of those sweet treats, or apple pie flavored smoothies that work. And getting creative with mocktails too, and being able to hold a drink that you feel is fancy and like a little special occasion drink that looks pretty, people are going to ask you what it is, and is something that you're looking forward to have, is something else that you can keep in mind, and find tons of fun mocktail recipes. And that's even a good way to get involved with kids too, and make fun drinks for kids and see what they enjoy as well. So there's lots of options that fit outside of the box of what a traditional holiday can look like. And so just really thinking about that, and asking questions for your team about what kind of things you can adapt to make them work for you.
Totally, such important points. And I think oftentimes, family and friends, they want you to feel included. They're, at least in my experience, they're generally open to modifying or adding on different side dishes or offerings, or, you can always bring something. They just don't know how or what. So I think not only, brainstorming and discussing with your healthcare team in terms of what's safe and appropriate, also kind of discussing those needs and collaborating with like your host, family, friends. I'd love to hear from the group, in a broader sense, how have you all navigated conversations with families, friends, during the holiday season? It could be, communicating your medical needs. It could be boundary setting, or, just some conversations that you've had to potentially help reduce stress around the holidays. That's a loaded question. I realize that. Jayme, you want to get started? Awesome.
Yeah. So for us, I feel like the communication and just a little bit of understanding goes a long way. Because, like I said, I put a lot of pressure on myself on, having that picture perfect Hallmark Christmas and Thanksgiving. And when that can't happen, communication has really gone a long way. And I think the biggest thing was really the education behind a fever, you know, and how important it is that, like, the common cold, like, I'm not afraid of that. That's fine. Just me personally, but if you have a fever, like, I need to know so that, hopefully whatever you have, my children don't get, because a fever for us is different than a fever for you. And I feel like COVID really helped normalize that a little bit, in the sense where people really realize that there might be, like, repercussions for getting sick, where we've kind of been in that bubble and had to deal with that the whole time. So that definitely helped us with the communication and just being very transparent. Like, listen, I can't, if someone has a fever, like, if they still want to participate and everyone else in the group feels great, that's cool. I'll just sit this one out. And not feeling guilty about that. I think that was like one of the hardest things, is not feeling guilty if I'm like, I'm just going to sit it out. And people understanding that it's not personal. It's not like Jamie's too tired or just doesn't feel like coming, or she got a better, invite somewhere else. It's just, this doesn't work for my family right now.
And I think, go ahead, Kalee.
I was going to say, how about you, Trinity? Okay. So that's perfect.
No, perfect. We're on the same wavelength. I was going to say, I agree with Jayme in that it's really important to set those expectations ahead of time. So I know for me, especially if it's going to be a long holiday day, I'm going to need some time to, like, take a breather, go back to my room, or go to a room, have a little nap, have a little rest, just recharge if I want to be able to enjoy myself later on in the night. And having told that at least to the host, or at least to somebody who knows that, hey, at a time I'm going to need to step out for a little bit, and that's just what's going to need to happen, and make sure that there's no surprises, and that way they can feel a bit better about it as well. Something that I also do, especially with people, say, newer to the family or newer to a celebration, who don't know about my situation with eating, and they might deal with those feelings of guilt around eating in front of me, or picking food and really enjoying food when I can't. And what I always tell them is, well, I can just pick what goes on your plate. If you want me to do that, like, I'll live vicariously through you. I'll pick what goes on your plate. And only a few people have taken me up on that offer. I think after that, most people are like, okay, no way, like, I'm doing this myself and I'll enjoy it. And that way it makes them feel better about it. And it kind of lightens up the situation and shows that, hey, it's kind of just whatever, I'm used to this, I can joke about this. And it's what works for me.
That's so funny, Trinity. I do the exact same thing. So I tell people, like, I'll just live vicariously through you. When they ask, can you eat that? Or, are you going to eat? Sometimes I'll say, like, oh, I've already eaten. That's usually a good one too. I already ate at, this person's house previously before. Or I'll be, I just simply say, sorry, I don't participate in too much food because I have, something going on with my stomach and it's just not the best. But I love living vicariously through other people. So I will ask them, like, how is that? How does it taste? Like, and then I also love cooking food as much as I can't eat food. I'm very much like Oliver. Like, I love to cook food and I like to be able to have, like, present that to people. So I love to also live vicariously through them as, like, I made this. How is it? Does it need salt? Is it good? Like, what can I do to make it better next year? And it's really about, like, communicating those needs. Like Jayme said, if I get invited somewhere, I'll ask like, what do you plan on having? Or I'll make the person aware that I'm like maybe not eat. I like, hey, thanks for the invite. I would love to join, but I probably won't eat just because, I'm kind of scared I might eat something that may upset me the next day. So that way they're not too worried about it when I come over and they're asking all those questions like, oh, can I get you this? Can I get you that? Can I get you this? And it's like, no, like I already try to make those aware usually when I get that invitation. So that way it's not too much pressure on the day of. Because I feel like we, brain gut connection is a real thing. So the more stress we're under at the event is something that I try to avoid for sure.
And for dining
I was
out
just, oh,
during,
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
No, I
Go
was just
ahead,
going to say
Jayme.
something super quick. I just also
Yeah.
think that expectation setting is important too. Especially when you don't see people like all year and it's like your one times, of like for my daughter, my in-laws live like 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes away. So, and especially like on Christmas Eve, like I want her hooked up on time because tomorrow is like the big day. You know what I mean? So I might duck out at 7. And that was really like hard for people to understand. Once you explain it, they're like, oh, okay. But it's like, why do you have to leave early? So I just have those conversations ahead of time so that when I leave and I'm like, all right, giving kisses and hugs and everybody's like, all right, bye. But there's no like, why is she leaving early? Or I'll bring the, like, now that they're older and I've gotten more savvy, I'll bring, stuff with us and we can keep going. But especially in those younger years, like Christmas Eve's important, because then the next day is, you want to keep being festive, but you got to save your energy and save, your time for spreading it out. So sorry, that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's nothing personal. These are health priorities. You have to take care of yourself during the holidays. I'd love to hear thoughts from other people on this too. Like, what's something you wish others better understood about navigating the holidays, while managing nutrition support?
I think going based off of like what Jayme was saying about like having to duck out early because you need to go home and get set up and like want to have energy for the next day, and that idea of like taking care of yourself. And just because the holidays are happening like does not mean that our responsibilities as either being a caregiver or a consumer have halted. Like that doesn't mean that we don't have to take care of ourselves and set up our feeds or our TPN or have to do meds or have to do IV fluids. Like all of those things are still happening while the holidays are they are happening at the same time. And so finding that balance, knowing when to say no to things. I mean, especially like even just this last month with Halloween, I had my family was like going to the pumpkin patch and they were like, "Do you want to come?" And I was like, "No, unfortunately, I do not have the spoons in my toolbox for that right now. Like I need to stay home and rest. I like hope you have a great time." Or making those choices. And sometimes it's like sucks to not be able to do those things, but trying to save my energy for the moments that really matter and that I really want to be a part of. And then also just like being prepared for things to come up. Like I've had my feeding tube break at the most inconvenient time. And then it's like, okay, how do I deal with that? So if I'm going to someone else's house, if I'm not going to be home for several hours, I have a literal fishing tackle box that I have packed with medical supplies that I could need if I'm not home, that I take with me everywhere I go. It has like flushes and syringes and alcohol wipes and little parts and bits and baubles for my feeding tube if it breaks. Like being prepared so that way if I'm out and something happens, I don't have to leave, but then also giving myself the grace that like I get to leave a space or go home if it's feeling too overwhelming or too tired. But I just try to be as prepared as I can. And it's helpful when things are being held in your own home, so you don't have to bring all of that with you, but that's like not an option for everyone. But yeah, I think it's important to take time to take care of yourself and also doing what you can to get ahead of the exhaustion or the burnout from the holidays. Asking for help. Like for me, I've had to get better at asking for help setting up feeds or asking for help setting up fluids because sometimes I'm just too tired at the end of the day to do it. So just being prepared for that in the holiday season.
I feel like that's really good advice, especially for those like maybe new to nutrition support or like this their first holiday season navigating. Having an emergency kit, taking care of yourself, setting boundaries, and being strategic about where you're celebrating the holidays are all such important call outs. How about you, Vince? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, actually, this year it kind of got me thinking when Oliver was speaking because I'm actually hosting Christmas this year, at my house. So I'm actually kind of like afraid to host a little bit because I'm not going to be able to duck out and just be like, hey, like I don't want to kick people out of my house, right? Like I don't want to just be like, hey, it's 7 p.m., like time for everybody to go home. But I think it gave me a great idea of like, to set those boundaries with the people that are coming over. Like, look, if things get late and we're gonna, and I start not to feel good, like we're gonna have to maybe end this a little bit earlier than it would be like typically when I'm going somewhere else for my family, because they'll stay and hang out till 10 or 11 p.m. Well, I need to get hooked up to my TPN by that point, and I need to do some things. And if I feel tired, like I'm gonna go to bed early, right? Like I would usually leave and go to bed, but I'm not really gonna have that luxury this year. So I think that it's gonna be setting those boundaries. And I do agree with Oliver. Like when I would go places, I always brought an emergency kit, and I always brought things to make me feel better, as such as meds and maybe even fluids. I remember one year I was like hooked up to fluids on the couch because I was like, I don't really want to go home. I still want to be able to like enjoy the people's company, but yet I'm tired. I need to do some fluids. So I brought like everything it was to do fluids. And, most of my family members are pretty good with it. I don't really have to say much, but they're, it's good to be prepared on what could happen better than, if you're not prepared and then you do have to leave or something happens. I think that would be more stressful to not have the things that are needed in an emergency versus, having to leave or something happened with a tube or a line and you just don't have those, those items with you.
They make party banners that say, please leave by 9. You should get that for your Christmas celebration. And two, like I to your point about having like a buffer or extra fluids, communication with your healthcare team or your home infusion provider to help support your holiday and travel goals can really help support having those maybe additional supplies or having those extra buffers and kind of maybe forecasting your needs collaboratively. Any
Yeah,
thoughts on that,
usually.
Trinity? Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Vince, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I try to do that with my DME when the holidays are coming up. I'll ask for, a couple more bags of fluids if that's possible or certain things because one, I know that their holiday schedule, they're gonna be closed. So if something happens, I'm kind of out of luck if they're completely closed because most of the time they'll have an on-call service or someone there, but they may not know my case, they may not understand. So I try to always have that, in advance. Like now, even this week, I've started to prepare. Like, what do I need to ask for next week? So that way I have all these supplies through Thanksgiving. So that way I don't run out of anything. I'm so totally prepared with that.
I definitely agree. Having extras of everything and proactively communicating with your team, especially if you're going to be traveling for the holidays or going somewhere, making sure that you bring extra, making sure that you have extra, and that your team is aware that you're traveling so that you get whatever documentation you need as well for that.
I just wanted to jump back to something Vince was saying about how, like, when you run fluids on the couch, your family isn't really like asking a lot of questions. They kind of like know the routine. One thing that I wasn't expecting to have to navigate or have learned to navigate is when children ask me about my like medical devices, and that's not something we've touched on yet. And I think could relate, especially if you're traveling into family who and there's little kids around. But trying to find ways to explain to children like what my medical device is in a way that's not scary to them. Like when they see my feeding tube, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's how I get my food. Like that's how I get my food. It goes in through my belly instead of like eating orally." Or if they see like my central line, having thought about how to explain it to them. And also I like, yeah, just like finding ways to make it seem more normal, and make it less scary because sometimes I think kids are maybe afraid to ask. So if I see them looking at it, I'll just tell them. Or if they like seem curious, we can have a conversation about it.
Eating comes in many forms. Jayme, I'd love to hear this thought, kind of play out for you a bit since you are a parent and caregiver. How have those conversations gone for you, or how have you navigated that in the past?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been something that we've always been a part of. Like Olivia's always had a tube. So it's funny with my 5-year-old though. A couple years ago, she's like, "Am I gonna get a tubie? Like, where's my tubie?" And we actually got her the tattoo tubie, like so that she could have a tube like Olivia. So in our family, it's been very normalized. And Olivia was one of the older ones, so kind of just always was something that everyone understood or just realized was a different way of eating. But what I was going to say was to get back a little bit to what Oliver was saying, or one of the original questions was, is asking for help is huge. And as a caregiver, like we've been in the hospital till like Christmas Eve. Like it's 3 o'clock on Christmas Eve and we're getting out because, we finally made it, or the rule out is done, and I'm stubborn. So it's been a learned behavior to ask for help. But and I also, I like to be the hub so that I can kind of control, the coming and the going and maintaining everything. So everyone brings a dish now. So especially because we like to have a big, so I might do like the big dinner, but everyone will bring sides and desserts to kind of take it off of me for feeling like I have to do everything. And even with shopping, I mean, online shopping is a lot more normalized now, but I was a big Black Friday girl, and the immediate gratification of going into the stores and buying things and seeing things. So I've had family members, boots on the ground. I'm stuck in the hospital. I can't shop. I can't do this. And that's really been helpful because sometimes it is really down to the wire. And there is no time. And you just have to use your resources and use, your community and the people that you have around you. And it also helps them feel like they're being helpful. And it also gives them a better perspective sharing, because they realize oh my God, if I was in the hospital right now, how would I be getting all of this done? So it kind of level sets things and makes conversations, subsequent conversations, easier too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to pull a question actually that we got submitted prior to the webinar. And if anybody else in attendance has questions, we would love to hear from you. You can utilize our Q&A feature. We've got about 10 minutes left. Kind of piggybacking off of that, Jayme, a question we got actually in several different forms was, what's even just a small thing or something that a host or loved ones can do to help make the holidays more accessible or inclusive, either for somebody on nutrition support or, caregivers managing the care of nutrition support.
I feel like simply just asking, if there's anything that I could use or that I need in order to make the day easier for me, or if I'm going and staying at someone's house, asking, is there anything I can do to prepare for before you get here that'll make things more simple? Because I remember, especially traveling in past years, and being on TPN and having to make sure that they had room in their fridge for my TPN, or having a place to store meds that need to go in the fridge. I sometimes struggled with having to navigate that conversation because I felt like a burden needing space in someone's fridge for things, especially around the holidays. But when people would ask me hey, is there anything I can do to get things ready for you to be here, or is there anything you need? Can I have anything on hand for you? I think that takes a pressure off of me to feel okay, I'm in this alone. I have to figure all of this out. And I know that that question can feel overwhelming for people if they don't know what they need. And so if there's someone if that person might need space in the fridge, asking, hey, can I make space in my fridge for you before you get here? If they might need a space to set all of their supplies because they're traveling with a lot of things, hey, what kind of space do you need to set up your feeds, or what kind of space do you need to store your supplies while you're here? Just things that maybe like I don't know if the person, if you if the person's been around for any point of time, they might know kind of what your needs are. But I think if the person hosting or the person who's wanting to figure out it, I honestly just ask is like what I would say. And if the person responds with I don't know, then there's like maybe a bigger conversation there. But as someone who's been on nutrition support now for a while, I typically know what is helpful for me. Um, I don't know if that answered the question, but
It does. It does. Like, how can I accommodate you, particularly if you're traveling or going to see them? It's, you've been on nutrition support, like you said, for a little bit. So you're able to clearly communicate those needs, but at least having the conversation and asking about that, like as a loved one or a host, I think is a great call out. How about you, Vince?
Yeah, I think one thing that I could say is my mom hosted for many years, and she would take the pressure off of me by like trickling down to my family, like, hey, Vince isn't doing that well. He's probably not gonna eat. So that way, like those questions were off of me, and I wasn't getting that stressful questions of, oh, can you eat this? Can you eat that? Oh, I made this. Like that's a really big thing. And then I think like a host asking if there's something that like specifically you can eat like Trinity was saying, like the mashed potatoes, like, is there anything you can eat? Well, I can't eat mashed potatoes if they're really blended really well, so they know that maybe they can blend the mashed potatoes a little bit so that way you can participate. And then I think a host also making things not about food is a great item. Like Jayme said, like, the place setting, the jokes, like have something for me to do as well than just eat. Like I love going somewhere and they're like, hey, can you help me set the table? Or can you do, like can you give the gifts out? Like those type of things. I think that's something a host that could definitely do, that would be helpful. So that way you're still participating, but it's not around that food centered items. But I really think that having my mom trickle that information down was really helpful for me. So that way the family was already prepared, because I've been doing this for a very long period of time. But some years I can't eat very well, and then there's other years where I'm not able to eat as well. So having the host kind of take that on, and if it is, maybe not your mom, or maybe it's a different type of host, maybe you could even ask them for that. Like, hey, can you maybe make a few people aware that, like, we're going to have someone joining, but they really don't eat in the normal way. So they're kind of going to be here just for that connecting and just for that friendship over they're here to specifically eat for food. Because I think everything is so food centered nowadays, as Oliver was saying, like your friends, you want to go get coffee? Do you want to go out to eat? And I've really learned to just be like, I've already eaten, those are a good excuse I always use. I've already eaten, or I'll just simply say, I'm not here for the food. I'm not here for the drinks. I'm here for just the connecting and the people. And that kind of just, people don't really ask questions that often. Like, oh, well, why aren't you here for the food? Like, that it's just like, oh, okay. They kind of just brush it off. So I think that's an easy way to manage that as well.
Yeah, that's great. We also have available for free on Oley's website, like dining out cards for those of you that are eating out or, going to restaurants socially during the holiday season. They're just simple, like little business card sized items that basically like vaguely spell out the fact that you have an underlying health condition that may affect your ability to eat normally. You might go without ordering. You might just order a beverage. You might have to request dietary modifications. And thank you for your understanding with that. Since sometimes starting those conversations can be difficult or uncomfortable, depending on, your comfortability with that. So if you have trouble finding those cards on our website, and this is something that's of interest to you, you can also email us at info@oley.org. Trinity, what advice would you give to loved ones and hosts this holiday season?
That's a bit tricky. I feel like I always host because I'm in a wheelchair and need it to be accessible. Um, But generally, I would say like to just know that if I'm there, if I'm wherever, it's because I actually want to be there and want to enjoy it. And so to take all the focus off of like anything about how I'm feeling or any illness or health related things. And I'm there because I want to spend time with people and enjoy the time with people. And I've gone out of my way or done something like with my health in order to be here. And to just recognize that and know that it's because I want to be there and I want to enjoy it. And even if that looks different, like Vince said, if you're on the couch getting IV fluids, it's still, you're doing that because you want to be there and enjoy the time with people. So to just make sure that people kind of know that you're there because you want to have fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think on the flip side too, like knowing that you've been included or invited to events, not because of what you can or can't eat, but because you're you. I know that's like way easier said than done, but I think like both sides of that perspective are important. How about you, Jayme?
Yeah, I mean, I feel similarly. When we show up, we want to be there and we want to enjoy and partake. We typically don't, we prefer not to use like those social settings to rehash like how the last 6 months have been. So if we're at a Christmas party and it's like, how's Olivia? I'm like, oh, she's great. Like, we're all good. Like, it's just not the time or the place, because we really just want to be together and be supportive of everyone and each other of what we're doing. So yeah, so I think that just kind of that boundary and level setting and understanding, and that we are going to participate in our own ways. And that doesn't detract from what's happening around us, but we're pushing in and doing everything that we can to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think boundary setting is crucial in terms of what conversations you feel comfortable or are you willing to engage in, and which ones, okay, this is not the time or place, or this would really drain me emotionally. And like you said, being understanding of that as a loved one, as a host, as a friend or family member. So well, thank you all so much. We are just about out of time. For those that are attending, if you think of any other questions, you can email us at info@oley.org. We'll also be sending out an amazing patient and caregiver tool summarizing some of what we've talked today with some additional tips and tricks of navigating the holiday season. And thank you so much, Vince, Trinity, Oliver, and Jayme, for sharing your time and expertise with us. And thank you again to Cardinal Health for sponsoring this webinar, and to all that attended. This webinar recording will be made available on our website at oley.org/webinars. If you're not already, make sure you're following Oley on social media channels. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and make sure you're signed up to get our emails. I hope everybody has a terrific Tuesday and a wonderful holiday season, and stay warm out there. Thank you all so much again.